Hello people, this is George on the 9th of April 2026 with today's message of hope. 45 years. Hold that number for a moment. That's 45 years of showing up, of knowing the procedures, the products, the systems, and that's for every merger. I'm talking about every rebrand, yes, every restructure a big four Australian bank goes through across half a century, right? Of training colleagues who came and went, of serving customers who probably never knew her name, but trusted the institution that had her face behind the counter. 45 years at the Commonwealth Bank, that's what I'm getting at. And when it ended, it was just a bunch of flowers and a service pin. Well, this lady's son protested in a way, yeah, when he gave the post on TikTok. Oh, by the way, his handle is a Dream Fuel Tribe. He called it pathetic, and the internet agreed loudly and immediately. And I'm not going to pretend I disagree. Well, something about that story doesn't just land in the guts, right? It lands somewhere deeper, I think. Somewhere we hold our understanding of what a human life is actually worth. So, I figured more than 2/3 of life, her life, and that's what her son said, more than 2/3 of this woman's life given to one institution. That's pretty amazing when you sit down and think about it, really. Now, I suspect many of you watching this have your own version of that feeling. Maybe not 45 years, maybe 5, maybe 10. Maybe you gave a season of your best energy to an organization that handed you a card signed by people who couldn't quite remember your last name. It happens. Maybe you were made redundant in a meeting that lasted just 12 minutes and after a decade of loyal service. Yeah, that's probably happening a lot right now across the globe. Maybe you watched a colleague retire to a small morning tea and a box of biscuits. Maybe. Well, the cold machinery of modern corporate life doesn't always give back what it receives. Sometimes it barely notices what it receives. Now, if this is speaking to you, I mean, we're speaking something you've been carrying, then I'm going to suggest you subscribe to this channel. I've got more to come every day. Now, I want to tell you about my own last day at a contract role, which I did enjoy. My colleague and I were both contractors, well, close to 2.5 years on that particular contract. You don't always expect much of a send-off in that situation, would you? Going in that you're temporary. That was my mindset. That the institutional loyalty tends to flow in one direction on a good day and nowhere on a bad one. Yeah, I mean, it's common. Contractors just finish up and that's the arrangement. But I affectionately remember my manager. He gathered the people, colleagues from different departments, people we will work alongside who had absolutely no obligation to care about two contractors walking out the door. He stood up, he thanked our service, said what we had contributed, and then I genuinely didn't see this coming. He raised money from those colleagues. We all got JB Hi-Fi gift vouchers. I used them on DVDs, of course, in those days. I don't remember how many I bought, but it was significant. I remember the feeling of not expecting it. The nice thing is, he also suggested another manager I should contact about future opportunity, which I did. Hey man, I got 2 kids and a mortgage, I need to work, right? But thank goodness I was just out of work for 2 weeks. Yes. Now I want to be honest about something here. The easy move is to use that story as discountable. Good manager, warm send off, things worked out. See, the system isn't always like that. You feel better about the world. You should. But that's not the point I want to make. Because here's the question I've been sitting with since I read about this woman at the Commonwealth Bank. Yeah. And the question is this, right? What if none of that happened? What if I had walked to the car park alone, driven to home silence, and that was it? Would the work have been worth less? Would the 2.5 years have meant less? Would what we contribute have disappeared because nobody gave a room to say so? Right? I don't believe it would. I think that's actually the most important question hiding inside this story. Not whether bank treated that woman correctly. I think they did. And someone's right. But whether her 45 years had a value that was ever in Commonwealth Bank's power to give or withhold. I'm getting ready for this because here's what Paul writes to the church at Colossians. And that's Colossians chapter 3, verse 23. Whatever you do, work heartily, as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as a reward. You are serving the Lord Christ. I love that. Work heartily, as for the Lord, not for men. After all, He is God. He is immortal. Right? Not for a service pin, not for a gathering in a break room, not a TikTok comment thread full of people who you must argue rightly outraged this week and moved on by the next. It's for the Lord and from the Lord, not from the institution, not from the performance cycle, not from the manager who may or may not remember your name when you walk out the door. From the Lord, you will receive the inheritance as your reward. I hope that's encouraging to you, because that is a different economy to the one Commonwealth Bank operates in, or any other secular company. Think about Moses. 40 years leading the people who complain about him. Oh boy, doubted him. Built a golden calf the moment his attention was elsewhere. That's heartbreaking, right? The Bible says he was the most humble man on the face of the earth. Boy, I love to meet him when I get there. He spoke with God face to face. He worked faithfully through decades of ingratitude. He never crossed into the promised land. He saw it from a distance and died. How's that for a reward? No farewell function. Yeah, no service pin. Paul just consistently planted church across the known world. He was shipwrecked. He was imprisoned. He was flogged within an inch of his life repeatedly. His reward in this life was execution. How's that for a reward for your hard work? But most of all, think of Jesus. Jesus, who's healed the sick, raised the dead, fed thousands from nothing, loved people who would turn on him within a week, suffered a brutal death on a Roman cross, publicly too. The soldiers gamble over his clothes at his feet. That doesn't sound like a pretty picture to me. None of them received what their service was worth. Not by any accounting this world uses. No. And yet, you see, Moses is with God. Paul is with God. Jesus is seated at the right hand of the Father. And every knee will bow before him, including mine. The earthly ledger was wrong. Yeah, the real one wasn't. Friends, I want to be careful here because I don't want this to become a cheap comfort. I genuinely feel for that woman. 45 years deserved better, I feel. And I think her son was right to feel what he felt. The coldness of it is real and worth naming. But there is a question underneath this story that matters more than flowers and a pin. Did she work as for the Lord? I don't know. Doesn't say. Because if she did, if she served those customers, trained those colleagues, and showed up through every restructure as an act of faithfulness to the Lord who sees, yeah, by herself, repenting of her sins, trusting the Lord, then there is an inheritance waiting for her that no institution on earth can grant, and no institution's failure can honor her work. Now, you may not experience an easy life while serving God in this world. You may not. Things are getting really tough out there, Christians and non-Christians. Moses didn't. I don't think he had an easy life. Paul didn't. Jesus certainly didn't. Right? but your reward is certain. That's in the scriptures. And it's worth more than anything this world has the ability to give you. I'm telling you now. The flowers will be dead by Friday. The pin will find a drawer somewhere in her room. But friends, God keeps better books than Commonwealth Bank. And nothing He has written down about you gets lost. Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and for the men, not for the men. This is the inspiration I have for myself to keep going this channel. Lord's returning soon. He's going to gather His children. Thanks for having me for your company. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye.